Nov Klibra, hi friends! Darth Momo back again, and today we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace. Isn't it crazy how old this film is? I recently got the opportunity to go visit the theater and watch this movie on the big screen, and it did not disappoint. It was a phenomenal viewing experience. And in honor of this beautiful George Lucas creation, I'm going to discuss a topic that I know I'm in the minority on, but hopefully after this video, I'll sway some more to my cause. I know it's popular to say Revenge of the Sith is the best prequel, but I actually want to go on record and say I disagree. And I say The Phantom Menace is actually the best Star Wars prequel. And here are 9 reasons why. In no particular order, of course. The first reason why is it looks like a Star Wars film. It's got more practical effects than the other 2 prequels. The CGI blends better with practical effects. And there's actually on-set locations. Fast forward to Revenge of the Sith, and everything is shot in a green screen studio, and even R2-D2 is CGI almost the entire film. Sorry, but in my opinion, when R2-D2 is CGI for most of the movie, you've gone a bit too far. This is also the only prequel shot on film. While yes, there is a scene or 2 shot digitally, it is mainly shot on film, whereas 2 and 3 are shot digitally. An impressive technological feat, to be sure. But unfortunately, I just don't think it looks as good. And I know it doesn't hold up as well when upscaled to 4K like the other films. At least that's what I've been told. Phantom Menace has that same film grain too, like 4 through 6, which helps add to the overall Star Wars feel of the film. The next topic I want to discuss is the story. I would argue that while the original trilogy opened us to a whole entire universe, the story was very grounded and simple. Fast forward to Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and the story gets very convoluted, let's say. The story can get a bit hard to follow at times, and sometimes it can just call for a flat-out suspension of disbelief to buy a couple things that happen in the film. Just look at Palpatine's plan in Attack of the Clones, the story of how the clones even came to be. Or you could look at the vast grand scale in the story, which, while this isn't a bad thing per se, the story wasn't able to properly flesh this out for a variety of reasons. Phantom Menace has a much more grounded story. Sure, you could say you don't care for the political aspect of the film, but guys, the politics take up very small parts of this movie. The plot is fairly easy to follow. Palpatine has a simple goal: become Chancellor, and he is willing to spin the Naboo crisis whatever way he needs to so he can accomplish that. As for Anakin's story, pretty simple. He's a slave boy who is helped by qui-gon to win his freedom and go on a train as a Jedi. And the Naboo story is also, again, pretty simple. The planet is under occupation and Padme has to fight to free the planet. It's far simpler to take in, and it's much more on par with the original films. The third reason I have also has to do with pacing. I've watched Phantom Menace several times over the last couple years, and it's pretty evenly paced. The movie starts out with some fun action, and by the time the action and the world building slows down a bit, we're in about 45 minutes into the movie. We slow down a little for Tatooine with some fun and exciting action in the middle, with the pod race. And then we head off to the Senate on Coruscant, which, again, guys, the Senate takes up like 3 or 4 minutes of the entire movie. It's not that long. And then we head back to Naboo, and it's just action until the end of the movie. Every scene continues to move the plot along, and the story just continues to unfold. Compare that to Attack of the Clones, which is so dragged out that even its trailer is unevenly paced. The movie lacks flow in a lot of areas. Then you compare that to Revenge of the Sith, which has an exciting 20-minute open, sure, but it slows down, and it slows down hard for the next hour or so until Order 66. And then, the last 45 minutes blast off. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's how you pace a movie. Phantom Menace has a far better balance between slower story-driven scenes and fun, fast action sequences. The fourth reason is the dialogue. Look, I know the prequels are known for their corny dialogue, and that's sort of become a meme. And some of the dialogue isn't bad, but let's face it, some of the dialogue just simply really isn't that good. However, I propose a thought. When you think of the quote-unquote bad prequel dialogue, what lines do you think of? And what movies are they from? Odds are you're probably thinking of some Anakin dialogue, and it's probably from episode 2 or maybe episode 3. Can you think of any awful lines from Phantom Menace? Some interesting ones? Sure. Maybe one or two that are maybe not great, but nothing in the film strikes me as awful or bad. And I think some of the lines are pretty good. There's some fun ones from Jar Jar or Obi-Wan. There's some insightful ones from Qui-gon or Shmi. And, I mean, come on, guys. Even some of the corny dialogue from the Nemoidians have become fun memes in their own right. Plainly put, I think the dialogue in Episode 1 is leagues better than some of the dialogue in Episode 2 and 3. Our fifth topic might be a little controversial to some, but to others, I know they're in a complete agreement. The lightsaber fights. The lightsaber duels we get in the original trilogy aren't flipping contests. They are much more grounded fights that complement the emotion between the two characters. And while I wouldn't say there's much emotional conflict between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Maul as characters, the choreography is phenomenal. It simultaneously brings lightsaber fights to new highs for the next generation while maintaining a grounded fight with excellent choreography similar to the originals, but continuing to upgrade. Looking at Attack of the Clones, the final fight with Dooku and Obi-Wan and Anakin, it's not that great with the choreography. And to me at least, the Yoda choreography at the end of the movie is borderline laughable. And in Revenge of the Sith, we not only have so many lightsaber fights that you might as well change the name to Star Wars Revenge of the Lightsaber Duel, but our climactic duel we've been building up to for 3 films is so over the top in execution, and it drags on and just keeps going and going and going. It's literally like a 10-minute lightsaber duel, excluding all the cutting and intercutting with Yoda and Palpatine. Compare that to the fast, quick, grounded, and slick duel in The Phantom Menace, and I think we've got a clear winner. And if you get a chance to listen to Dave Filoni's brief commentary on the Duel of the Fates, I think it adds a whole extra level. But, again, I still think it's a clear winner to begin with. Another area Phantom Menace takes the win in is the villains. Let's add the roster up. Sidious is in all 3, so we'll set him aside, though I would say he's got a much better role in this film as opposed to Attack of the Clones. Revenge of the Sith, I think they're about on par. As for our secondary villain, though, we've got Darth Maul, Count Dooku, and General Grievous. And guys, I think Darth Maul is just leagues cooler than Count Dooku. He's got the look, he's got the menace, he feels threatening, and he's got that sweet double-bladed lightsaber. Compare that to boring, comes-out-of-nowhere Count Dooku, who has very little screen time and characterization, at least until the Clone Wars series rolls around. But for all that, I'll take him over a literal coughing robot with no intimidation or threat whatsoever in Episode 3's General Grievous. Look at the foot soldiers, too. The battle droids are far better in Episode 1 than Episodes 2 and 3. In Phantom Menace, they are a constant, threatening presence. Droidekas take on Jedi like it's nothing, droids capture Theed with no difficulty, and the battle against the Gungans leaves many casualties on the Gungan side. In Episode 2, they're absent for most of the film, and while yes, they do show up later and help take out a lot of Jedi, the clones show up and quickly tip the threat in favor of the clones. And in Revenge of the Sith, we only see them fighting against the Jedi and the Wookiees in the first half of the film, and it's no contest. Plus, by this point, they've been relegated to a comic relief role, a role which started with a 3PO missing head stunt in Geonosis' arena in Episode 2, whereas Episode 1 leaves them as competent and effective, cool-looking foot soldiers. Once again, I think Phantom Menace takes the cake. Phantom Menace, like the other films, also has a great score, but if we had to absolutely rank the greatness of the maestro John Williams' work, I think out of the 3 films, Phantom Menace has the superior score in the prequel trilogy. Look, I love Battle of the Heroes as much as the next guy, but Revenge of the Sith isn't the most original film score. It's got some great tracks, and I mean that, truly great, phenomenal tracks, but it is built upon a lot of familiar cues from the previous 5 films like Across the Stars, Duel of the Fates, and lots of classical trilogy motifs. Even looking at Attack of the Clones, so much of the film's score actually was repurposed from the Phantom Menace, including the entirety of the Battle of Geonosis. Phantom Menace not only defined the music bar for the new trilogy, but it brought so many beautiful new scores while perfectly and sparingly reusing classic themes. Duel of the Fates, Anakin's theme, the entirety of the soundtrack for the Battle of Naboo, Qui-Gon's funeral, the celebration music at the end, it's truly a solid score. And look, I'll concede that Revenge of the Sith is phenomenal as well and has a truly moving score, but it's narrowly edged out by the Phantom Menace. I would ask you, except for the big ones like Battle of the Heroes, Anakin vs. Obi-Wan, and Order 66, are there any major cues that top the highlights of the Phantom Menace? Sure, there's maybe 15 minutes or so in this film that is pure 100% peak, but we're talking 15 minutes in a 2-hour and 20-minute movie. Compare the overall score of the entire film, and I think Phantom Menace presents itself as a true winner. Another winning factor for the Phantom Menace is perhaps one of its strongest, the world building. Before the Phantom Menace, all we had was what we saw in the original trilogy, which were mainly backwater or unknown worlds. Of course, we branch out a little bit in the EU, but that was all on paper and more or less held to the formula of the original trilogy. Then when you get to the Phantom Menace, the universe just opens. Coruscant is like the modern-day Mos Eisley Cantina scene. So many new creatures and concepts, so much new lore. There's arguably more creativity on display in this movie than the entirety of modern-day Hollywood. Things that are so fundamental to the saga today, like the Republic, the Senate, and the Jedi Order, only exist because of the Phantom Menace. Naboo and its entire culture, a centerpiece of this trilogy, is established in this film. Mostly everything we know about the Jedi and Sith is set up here. The main conflicts and villains and the soldiers are set up here. Sure, episode 2 and 3 are far from dull in their world building, but compared to what the Phantom Menace brought to the table, what they set up looks like nothing. Even the Clone Wars, the main ongoing plot in episodes 2 and 3, finds its roots in the political scenes in the Phantom Menace. The entire look and aesthetic of the prequel trilogy, which was a far cry from what we got in the original films, was all set up and laid out in this film. Even the Siege of Mandalore, the Clone Wars finale, and one of the best Star Wars stories in the eyes of many fans, would not exist without the Phantom Menace's Darth Maul. Find what you love about episodes 2 and 3, and I can guarantee you a majority of it can be traced back to the world building and the lore established by this film. I might even go as far as to say that the world building in episode 1 is the best in the entire saga, save for the original film which started it all. But we're getting off topic. Back to the prequels. My final reason Phantom Menace is the best prequel, and perhaps one of the most important reasons, if not the most important reason, is nostalgia. Just stop. Think about it for a moment. Immerse yourself in the world of May 1999, 25 years ago. This was the first Star Wars movie in 16 years. This was quite possibly one of the best times to be a Star Wars fan. The original trilogy just came back in full force in the special edition release in '97, and the universe was about to get a whole lot bigger. New characters, new locations, new factions, new ships. As an official rule, Lucasfilm EU authors were prohibited to explore pre-original trilogy, the only exception being the Tales of the Jedi comic in the late 90s, which took place about 4,000 years before the films. Phantom Menace unlocked the rest of the universe. Everything pre-Phantom Menace was now on the table, and even some in-universe years post-Phantom Menace. The merchandise too, so many new toys and books and CDs and memorabilia. Back then, Star Wars was a big deal. It's not the corporate machine it is now. Star Wars was something special, especially in the 70s and early 80s. It went away for a while, and this was the beginning of its return. And if you think about it, it really hasn't gone away since. Then think about it. The new trailer, people bought tickets to movies and left after the episode 1 trailer was played. This was the motion picture event of a generation. Fast forward to opening night and the premiere of The Phantom Menace. Guys, the energy was electric. Go ask around. Even the people who despise The Phantom Menace will speak fondly of this time. I wasn't even alive yet, and yet I've borderline studied this era. It was something different. The fan community was far more wholesome back then, too. It was definitely a window into a different time. A perhaps simpler time. Just thinking back on the days of Star Wars pan and scan VHS tapes, TV commercials, this was pure definition of Star Wars nostalgia. And when you compare the nostalgia of not just the prequel films themselves, but of the Star Wars culture surrounding them, Phantom Menace was clearly a different animal. Man, I wish I could have experienced that time period personally. But those are my 9 reasons on why I think The Phantom Menace is the best Star Wars prequel. Hopefully I was able to persuade you on some of my points. If not, let me know in the comments down below what you think. I do want to mention though, just because I ragged on the other prequels a bit, don't perceive that as me being a hater. Because that's not true. I genuinely love the prequels, all of them. Guys, it's no secret, no matter what you feel about the Star Wars under Disney nowadays, back then, we had it good. We as fans truly didn't know how good we had it. Yes, they have flaws, but as my friend Cole Steiner once said, a true artist understands the value of something even through its flaws. So I extend that invitation to everyone watching as we celebrate 25 years of this beautiful film. Give it a second chance. Go watch it. Turn off your previous prejudice toward the film and go in with an open mind. And you might just be surprised. You might have had a change of heart. You might even have fun. Like I did when I first gave it a second chance several years ago. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. If you liked the video, comment down below and hit that like button. Oh, and check out some of my other videos. I'm sure you'll find them delight.